I want to talk with you about how to determine Sabbaths. I still have people who contact me who believe that Saturday is Sabbath. Certainly people who are new to the channel might be observing Sunday as Sabbath. What I would like to ask you is, where is Saturday and Sunday in the Bible? In fact, where do you get your days of the week? A simple Google search, and this is very important for helping you to understand, just on a very basic and fundamental level. Where does this come from? And if it comes from this place that I'm going to show you, if it comes from there, when did Jews, or those calling themselves Jews, begin to observe this practice that came from the Roman and Germanic traditions, where they observed days that are named after Roman gods or idols of worship? If true Jews received everything from the Torah and from God, would they be practicing this? Is this what God established? Absolutely not. So I want to show you first so that you can know that what you are calling days of the week, what you are accustomed to calling days of the week, Monday through Sunday, comes from Roman and Germanic traditions based on gods they worship. Simple Google search, not complicated. Where do the days of the week come from? And while we have to be very careful about Google, this is just clear. This is face valid, okay? The names of the days of the week come from a combination of astronomical observations and mythological traditions, primarily from ancient Babylonian and Roman cultures. The Babylonians, who were skilled astronomers, observed the movements of the celestial bodies like the sun, moon, and planets, and associated them with days of the week. The Romans later adopted this system, but also associated the days with their own pantheon of gods. All right, so Moon Day, Sun Day, Saturn Day. You get the picture? That's what we've been observing. That's what we have been raised and accustomed to observing. And unfortunately, living in the world among these other nations, we have to have a common language of how to reference the days of the week. But you should know where this comes from, and that you don't go and join or try to reconcile pagan practices with what God has established. And doing that has not worked out well for us. It is prophesied in the Bible that Jews were going to lose God's Sabbaths and holy days. There is something that God told us to observe, and that is his new moon. He refers to the moon in Psalm 89:37 as the faithful witness in the sky. What is it a faithful witness of, I wonder? Well, the new moon marks the first day of the month. And in Leviticus 23, God said that when you're observing his Sabbaths, what you're doing is you're counting down days. He's never, ever, not once in the Bible given you names for days. He has you counting days to his Sabbaths. So if you know from Amos 8:5 that the new moon is a rest day on the first day of the month, and you know from Genesis 7 and 8 that there are 30 days in God's month, and you know from Revelation 11 that the witnesses are testifying for 1,260 days, which we're told in Scripture is 3.5 years, then you know that there are 30 days in God's months. The first day on new moon is going to be a rest day. We know that from Amos 8:5. That's going to be followed by 6 days of work and a 7th day of rest. That 7th day doesn't have a name. It has a number. The 7th day after 6 days of work. And this is going to happen 4 times in a 30-day month. And then you're going to have one day at the end of that month that's going to be a work day. So in God's lunar month, you will consistently have the first day of the month as a rest day. Always. Never going to change. Faithful witness in the sky. Always stays consistent. The 8th will be a Sabbath. The 15th will be a Sabbath. The 22nd and the 29th will also be Sabbaths, except for certain months in which God has commanded that the holy days that the holy days end up rearranging the Sabbaths. Not a big deal, because it starts right over with the first day of the month always being a rest day. Typically, the last day of the month is going to be a work day. The first day, always a rest day. Faithful witness in the sky, always going to get you back on track. It should be mentioned that the new moon is not the dark moon. That was changed. The new moon is the crescent moon. If it's a faithful witness in the sky, then you're going to see it. What this also means is that it's going to be challenging for you to take Sabbaths off. And God told you it would be. But this is a sign between you and him that you're in the covenant. There is no Saturday or Sunday in the Bible. There is a countdown from the first day of the month being a rest day consistently as the faithful witness in the sky. Then 6 days of work, a 7th day of rest. This goes on for 4 weeks. This is also why the Festival of Weeks is stated to be the Festival of Weeks instead of the Festival of Days, because you're not counting down days. You're counting off 7 weeks. And if you are observing new moon, then you know between a set of 4 weeks that you have 2 days. You have the last day of the month, the 30th, and you have the first day of the month. Because a week is defined by 6 work days and a 7th day of rest. So if you're observing this, you understand why God stated it that way. The reason he did not state it as count off 50 days. He said count off 7 weeks up to the 50th day. And then he says observe a Sabbath because you wouldn't normally be observing that 50th day of a Sabbath. You would be as a Sabbath. You would be observing the 49th day as a Sabbath. So the Festival of Weeks is not 50 days after Passover or Easter, if that's what you're observing. There is no Easter, by the way. But it's not going to be, not Passover. The offering of first fruits, that's what we're counting down from. I apologize. But I guess the reason I even say that is because the Catholic Church and the prostitutes that bore out of her, I believe they actually count down from Easter. I think that's why that was on my mind. So there's no countdown. That's not the specification, you realize. If you read Leviticus 23, you're counting down from the offering of first fruits. But see, they claim that the offering of first fruits was the third day on which Jesus rose. And they claim that it was 3 days after his death that he rose. That's not how he stated it. He said, I'm going to be handed over. I'm going to suffer many things. I'm going to be crucified, and then on the third day, I'm going to rise. So from the time that he was handed over on Passover, that night, that's day 1. Day 2 is the next day when he was crucified, still Passover. And then day 3, the first day of the week. He was crucified on the Sabbath. Anyway, I discussed that in another video. I don't want to open up a can of worms in this video, but I do want to help you to understand that just because you're accustomed to, because of the deception in the world and the times we're living in, just because you're accustomed to a certain calendar, you're accustomed to the names of days, does not mean that that came from God. You need to look at the origins of what you're practicing, and you need to be questioning what it is that you're ingesting and where are you getting that from. You did not get Saturday or Sunday Sabbaths from the Bible. You got that from man. And if you got that from man who has prostituted themselves to the world, or a church that has prostituted themselves to the world, and you are practicing that, that makes you a prostitute, whether you know it or not. And now that you know, you need to discern this with God. You need to ask him if this is true. You're being given an opportunity to accept truth. And remember, if you reject the truth, you decide, no, that's inconvenient for me. Well, God says he rejects people as his priests for rejecting the truth. The last thing I want to tell you, I started to say this and then I lost my thought. The last thing that I want to tell you is that Paul told you guys that Jews are loved on account of the patriarchs, those descended from Abraham. loved on account of the patriarchs, but as far as the gospel is concerned, they're enemies for your sake. Okay? And I'm not talking about all descended from Abraham. I'm not talking about an entire ethnicity. Those who have not accepted Christ, loved on account of the patriarchs, enemies as far as the gospel is concerned. So why is it that so many of you are either going to Babylon the Great, the harlot Catholic Church, and the prostitutes that bore out of her to tell you what your Sabbath is? Why are you doing that? And why are you why are you going to those that Paul already told you are enemies as far as the gospel is concerned in order to receive your gospel? Is the word not enough? Is God's Spirit not enough? You need to go discern this with God.